Franz Wagner struggles for the first time at Eurobasket. We break down his game, plus answer your questions in the first half of our Twitter Spaces here on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Orlando Magic Daily Twitter Spaces. Here it is Tuesday, September 6, 2022. If you're watching on the podcast on YouTube, it'll probably still be September 6th. I'm going to post this immediately after we're done. But this will be the September 7th episode of Locked On Magic. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the site expert and editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, as well as the host of Locked On Magic, coming to you here on a beautiful and a little rainy Tuesday afternoon in the City Beautiful on the eve of Orlando City's big game against the Sacramento Republic FC for the U.S. Open Cup. That's a shameless plug. And we're here to talk Orlando Magic basketball. I want to open this space up to you guys to ask Magic questions and get into things. I already have a speaker request. I see you, Travis. I'm going to get to you here in just a moment, but I do want to hit the big news of the day for the Orlando Magic, or the big news, and one of the things that I was trying to tail this off of, and the reason why the Twitter space name is named Franz Wagner is King of Eurobasket, that is definitely not the case after his game today. It was a rough game for Franz Wagner and Germany today. An 88-0, or it's not 88-0, 88, that'd be really bad. 88-80 loss to Slovenia. The defending champs, Luka Doncic, had a Luka Doncic game, and really what we saw in this game, and what we saw to me was just kind of the stark difference between a player like Luka Doncic and to some extent a player like Franz Wagner. Look, it is a bad idea. It is a mistake to compare Franz Wagner and Luka Doncic at this point. At this point, Luka Doncic is an MVP frontrunner. I would probably, I don't think I'd pick him to win MVP this year because I think Dallas is going to take a little bit of a step back. Sorry, Nick. But Luka Doncic is an MVP caliber player, and he showed it today. He dominated the ball. He took all the shots. He carried his team to a win that they needed to have. Slovenia needed this win to avoid having to play France to get into the round of 16. This was a must-win game for Slovenia, and Luka Doncic certainly played like it after their loss the other day, I believe, to Lithuania. Franz Wagner is not that player. And in fact, I think that's one of the big criticisms. And I think one of the things we wanted to see him improve on, and something that maybe he can still improve on, but Franz Wagner is not a dominant on-the-ball guy. And I think that was what was proven out in today's game. Franz Wagner finished with with 7 or 8 points. He was 2 for 7 from the floor. He just, it was 8 points, sorry, made 2 threes and 2 free throws. He just really struggled to get himself going. He just really struggled, honestly, to get himself involved. And you got to give credit to Slovenia's defense. It was not necessarily that they did anything to keep the ball from Franz. It was they did a good job keeping Dennis Schroeder and the other cohort of Germany's guards out of the paint and unable to kick it back out to Franz, where he can feast on those open threes, where he can feast on closeouts, where he can kind of work those secondary pick and rolls. That's where Franz gets a healthy bit of his diet and a good chunk of what makes him so good. I think that what we saw here is a little bit of Franz's limitations, a little bit of where he still has to grow. And we all know this. We know he has to be a little bit more assertive. He has to be willing to look for a shot a little bit more. And I think he is. Honestly, I think what we've seen from him in Eurobasket so far is that he has an added confidence. He took 2 bad shots early on in the game. And it just feels big because he got so few shots. He only got 7 shots in the game. He was 2 for 7 for the game. Those shots feel big because he wasn't getting a lot of opportunities. And certainly we're more focused on him than maybe Germany is. But certainly Germany, I think, has to do a better job getting him involved. And if Franz is going to become a better player, if Germany is going to advance, they need to make sure Franz is involved. I would expect against Hungary on Wednesday, tomorrow, that they're going to give Franz a healthy diet of shots. They're going to make sure they keep him involved, and they find a way to kind of break down the defense. Again, give Slovenia all the credit in the world. They're switching defense, they're trapping defense, did a good job preventing Germany from getting into the paint. Schroeder had a real tough time getting in the paint. They were forced on the perimeter. They took a lot of bad shots, and Germany was climbing uphill the entire way and just could not get Franz involved in the way that Germany has to in order to succeed. Again, I think that we know these are weaknesses for Franz, that he sometimes struggles to get himself involved, that he sometimes struggles to be assertive as a scorer. That's not his instinct. I think his instinct is to do what's best for the team, play his role, and getting him to play beyond that, I think, is going to be a big struggle. But at the same time, Orlando's got a lot of guys that need the ball, and if the offense is working, the ball will find Franz, and that's a big thing that I say is Franz Wagner is the kind of player that when the offense is working, the ball finds him, and that's I think a really big thing too. The offense wasn't working in this game, and so the ball did not find Franz. And Germany, for whatever reason, some of it might be he's young, he's a rookie on this team, whatever it is, Germany could not get him the ball in an effective way. So, I think that that is something to keep an eye out for sure. That is something that I think that is something that Franz has to develop. But it's a little bit tactics too. I will say, though, this was not all bad for Franz Wagner. It wasn't a good game by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not sitting here saying that. But Franz Wagner, to me, what I've been most excited about watching Franz is not just the added confidence on offense from him. He looks much better defensively. And that's saying something because he was already pretty good defensively. Franz had the best defensive possessions of the game on Luka Doncic. Doncic had 33 points. He dominated this game. He won this game. He carried his team to a victory. And that's what a true superstar does, which I think we could all agree Franz Wagner probably isn't that. But when Germany put Franz Wagner on Luka Doncic and Franz was able to stay with Luka and not get switched off of him, Germany was switching pretty much every screen to try and trap him and try and guard him. Franz played really, really well. He had a block on Luka early on, forced to travel early on. He was able to strip Luka on one occasion. And as good as the offense is and as exciting as everyone is about the offense from Franz Wagner, his defense during this run on Eurobasket, his defense has been really good. And it's really, his anticipation, his patience on defense has been really good. Again, I've watched, I said this earlier on in the week, I've watched a lot of FIBA Fournier. I've watched a lot of Evan Fournier in these kinds of tournaments. I have not seen Evan Fournier play a game as poorly as he did against Germany, outside of playing the United States as he did in that opener against Germany last weekend. And Franz wasn't the only guy defending him, but Franz had a big role in that. I joked during the game on Twitter that it was kind of coaching malpractice not to have Franz Wagner on Luka Doncic more throughout this game. I thought they were trying to save it for the fourth quarter when it was close. Franz picked up two really bad fouls, in my opinion. Two kind of like cheap fouls. And that got him into foul trouble. That put him at 4 fouls, and it would have been tough to play him on Luka at that point. So certainly I think that we've seen some really good things from Franz. And even in this game, even in a game where he really struggled, I think we saw some really good things from him. And I think I think he's going to continue to get better. And honestly, I think this will be probably his worst game of Eurobasket. And again, if this is his worst game of Eurobasket, that's probably a really good thing overall. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about Franz Wagner. And even after a game like this, you could find something to be excited about. The confidence is there. He's still just 21 years old, guys. So we shouldn't expect perfection. There was a little bit of extra attention put on him. I think they did a good job denying him the ball, kind of pushing him off his spot on cuts, and that further gummed up Germany's offense. But Germany, I think, really struggled to get itself going. And again, Franz is the kind of guy that when the offense works, the ball finds him. That's a big thing for him. The offense really struggled to work in this one. That's kind of my recap of today's game. Again, Germany falls to Slovenia 88-80. Germany had already clinched their spot in the round of 16. They are moving on to this weekend's knockout round. Who they play, where they play, what their seeding ultimately is, that's going to get determined with their game against Hungary. Hungary, the land of my grandparents, although I don't think they'd particularly be proud of that. We can dive into that history a little bit later on, but not today though. But But Hungary's probably the worst team in Group B, the quote-unquote group of death. The fact that Germany is sitting here at 3-1, through 4 games of this group, that's a really strong showing from a team that I think was expected to get out of the knockout stage. Was expected to get out of group play, but not do much more than that. Like I said, I think Germany's goal is to get to the quarterfinals, win a knockout game. I think honestly, they've accomplished a lot of their goals and what they want to see developmentally. They know they have a future stud in Franz Wagner. They have some really nice young shooters. Mo Wagner is sitting on the bench, with the injury. I think they think he'll be a big part of the puzzle. As they begin to transition away from maybe Dennis Schroeder, the question will be, can Franz Wagner take over a bigger role? And when we get to the Olympics in 2 years, when we get to Eurobasket again in 4 years, I would expect to see Franz Wagner kind of flip the script on everything that we've been talking about today and why he struggled so much in this game and what we want to see from him. I think he will be a much more confident and better creator and scorer during these next tournaments. But, again, essentially he is a rookie right now. He's the rookie of this group. We're going to take a quick break from our conversation on the Twitter space to tell you a little bit about Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're really depriving yourself of one of the great joys and one of the truly great protein snacks you will ever have. That's right, Built has done it again. They've created the delicious, indulgent cookie dough Built Bar Puff. That's the cookie dough chunk puff flavor. Have a light and chewy texture. They're real cookie dough chunks right on top. And of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without any of the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. So do not walk, run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It'll be the perfect treat, or you can find a really good hiding place to just keep it for yourself. Like all Built Bars, new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 1% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty too. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. They're so good. What's great about Built is that all of their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. So eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. So ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built Bar today. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15. That's a new promo code, LOCKEDON15, and get 15% off your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON15. So that does it for my recap of today's Eurobasket game. It's time to turn it over to you guys. This is a Twitter space. I want to kind of take your questions and hear from you guys what you think about Franz at Eurobasket, what you're seeing from him, what you're most excited about for the upcoming season, and plenty more. You can ask me questions about going through the practice facility, for crying out loud. It was pretty incredible. I know we had a person who wanted to ask a question earlier. Sorry I didn't get to you. If you're still in here, go ahead and pop back in and we'll grab you. So if you want to make a speaker request, if you want to jump in with a question, feel free to do so. This is your time. This is your space. And I want to hear from you guys and hear what you have to say. So with that, I will turn the floor over to you guys. If anyone has any questions, any thoughts about the Magic that they want to share, now is the time to jump on and share them. And I'm here to answer any and all questions. I'll hang out here for about another 30, 40 minutes or so. If you guys are however long you want, I'm good with whatever. So if you have a question, if you have a Magic question, feel free to jump on. I may platoon you here, Richard, to talk a little bit about us to fill the gap. Let's hear from Harry here. Harry, how's it going, man? Oh, hold on, you got to connect first. But Harry, how's it going, man?
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm Crew from the UK. Big Magic fan.
Oh, awesome.
My simple question is, what is the expectation for this season? I'm seeing, make the planes, make the playoffs. Where are we? Yeah,
I am. I will fudge this a little bit, and I see Jay, I'll get to you here in just a second, but I will fudge this a little bit. I don't think there is a win total expectation. And I don't think, yes, making the play-in tournament would be great. If you make the play-in tournament, I think you hit a lot of the expectations and a lot of things we want to see. I still think this is still a very beginning stage of a rebuild. And while we have a really nice piece in Paolo Banchero, he is a rookie. And rookies are going to make mistakes. I mean, the kind of game that Franz Wagner had today in Eurobasket is the kind of game a rookie has, where they have one really good game and then they kind of take a step back and they have to kind of reconfigure themselves in this atmosphere and with the attention that they're getting.
Yep.
I think that the Magic's goal this year is to be more competitive and to just, begin to take steps forward. I don't think that necessarily means a win total. I think that, if the team's fully healthy, being on pace or on track to get to 30 wins, to the low 30s, that would be a heck of a season. That would be a really strong season. That would be a pretty good step forward. But really, I think what we want to know coming out of this season, or what the Magic want to see coming out of the season, is to have a better understanding of what this team looks like when it's ready to compete. I think I said last year that the goal was to have kind of the outlines of what this team would look like. This season, I think the Magic need to exit the season knowing, okay, Paolo Banchero is our number one guy. Paolo Banchero is our star. We can build around him. Wendell Carter is a really nice piece. Jalen Suggs, where does he fit in? It's having, I often kind of use the puzzle box as my metaphor for all this. The goal at the end of the season is to know what the picture on the puzzle box looks like. So you can start assembling the pieces and filling in those corners and filling in the insides a little bit. I mean, last year I think we just had a bunch of blank puzzle pieces, but no picture on the box. This year it's about figuring out what the picture on the box looks like and then beginning to get the pieces to make that picture, if that makes sense, if that metaphor is not too labored.
Yeah, I think I get where you're coming from. Would you say this is almost, I hate to use the word, but tank season, but if you understand what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Season where...
I look, if the Magic have the worst record in the league, and they are out of the, completely out of the playoff picture by January, or not trying to win actively in January, February, I would say this season's a failure. Like, the Magic should not, the Magic have had 2 tank drafts essentially. They should not be an actively tanking team. At least not until like really late in the season, or if injuries really kind of bog them down. They've got enough young guys where they may lose a lot of games because they're young, and that's fine. But they need to be at a point where their young guys are trying to win, where their young guys are learning good habits. And you don't learn good habits if you're sitting players or if you're playing a lot of G League guys. They need to see what they have. And if they lose because Paolo Banchero is a rookie and shoots 38%. Kevin Durant, remember, shot like 32% his first year in the league. And Paolo Banchero has taken 20 shots a game and missing a ton, but he's getting those reps. And there's clear signs that, like, okay, these reps will be worth it. Fine, so be it. That's what we want to see this year. So those kinds of mistakes are fine. And I'm not like, I do think this team's going to lose a lot. It's still going to lose a lot this year, but they'll be better. They'll take steps forward. If they're like at the end of the season playing completely for lottery balls, or they're playing for lottery balls before we get to that last kind of 2 weeks of the season that are always kind of wonky, then they've done something wrong. Like, again, the goal, no one's going to turn down a high draft pick. There will become a point, especially this season with this draft, and Richard Stamen's here in the Twitter space. Maybe he could hype us up a little bit on this draft. The top of this draft, there's going to be a siren call to pack the bags, but the Magic are going to lose. The Magic are probably going to lose plenty without that. Be cautious with injuries later in the season, but overall, like, they should be trying to win games, and they may fall short in that attempt, but that's going to be valuable experience for these guys. So I don't think this is a straight tanking season. This is just a season where there's going to be a lot of youth, and consistency is an issue with young players, and that's just what you expect to see.
I agree, but then I look at things like, for the first game, Detroit are favourites to beat us. They are favourites, and I don't think that's very fair, but that's how it is right now. Yeah,
I mean, I think the last I saw, and I don't know if our pals at BetOnline.ag have posted that, and I'll get to you here in a sec, Jay. I apologize. I apologize for making you wait here. The last I saw was Detroit was -3. 3 points is usually the standard for home teams. So, I kind of view that as a toss-up. I mentioned this to some friends who were talking about the season and talking about what to expect. Not more of the Action Network. He's a basketball commentator that I really respect. He would always say that like the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season and the last 2 to 3 weeks of the season, just throw those out. They don't really tell you anything. The first weeks of the season, everyone's trying to figure themselves out. It's a new season. Everyone's feeling great. You get some weird results. The last 2 to 3 weeks of the season, half the teams are trying to tank. Other teams are playing games with seeding. You don't really know what's going on those last weeks of the season. So for gambling advice, the first weeks of the season aren't the best for betting. I would put it that way.
All right. Thank you. That's all I've got for now.
No problem. Thank you very much for hopping on. Let's hear from Jay now when he connects. Hold on a sec. Jay, are you there, my man?
Hey, I think I'm here now.
Yeah, there you are.
All right, there I am. What's up, guys? I'm Jay. I'm from Holland, and I've been a Magic fan for a long-ass 20 years now.
We appreciate that.
I've got 2 quick questions. The first one is maybe give us a projected stat line of Paolo for the upcoming year. And a quick follow-up question behind that is, how do you feel about the whole Torch situation? Should we maybe trade him, or should we, like restructure his contract or whatever?
Yeah, I'll start with Paolo here. I think it's really hard to say what Paolo's going to do, because I think some of it is we don't quite know yet how the Magic plan to use him. That's kind of the first place to start, is where do the Magic want to put him in? And I think we saw some hints of that in Summer League, but obviously Summer League is Summer League. It's its own little thing. I think we will see them play him kind of as a point forward a little bit at the top of the key. They'll set him up in that mid-post area. They're going to try a bunch of different things with him. So, I would expect Paolo to score. I would probably say I'd expect him to score about 18 points per game. I think that's where I'm kind of settling in, especially because of how egalitarian the Magic's offense is going to be. There's going to be nights where Paolo scores 25, 26. There's going to be nights where he maybe scores 14, 15 points, just because the offense is kind of sorting itself out and there's not a real clear pecking order quite yet. But I do think by the end of the season, you want to see Paolo establishing himself. As long as he's healthy, you want to see him kind of picking up and having more consistency later in the season. So to me, it's not necessarily about the scoring average. And again, this was what was so great about Franz, is he was so consistent throughout the whole year. He was just a constant drumbeat throughout, but which is really rare for a rookie, I might add. So what I want to see from Paolo is, I did this study, this kind of short study with Jalen Suggs early on in the year, because Jalen Suggs was struggling. I was like, what other, how did like Donovan Mitchell play? How did Trae Young play? How did John Moran play? Some of these guys that he was compared to, how did they play early in their careers? Because I remember Donovan Mitchell had some struggles early on in his career with the Jazz. I remember John Morant had some ups and downs, and I looked at those guys, and yes, they did have a lot of wild swings early on in their careers. But early in their rookie seasons, they all had these kind of big burst games that within the first 2 weeks of the season that really showed you how good they could be. So what I would expect from, I don't mean to sidestep your question. I would say, honestly, Paolo's probably going to average around 18.5 points per game, maybe 6 to 7 rebounds per game. He's not the greatest rebounder in the world. And then I'd like to see him up around 3 or 4 assists per game, with the potential to have a triple-double at some point during the season. The benchmarks that I'm really looking for with Paolo are, within the first 2 weeks of the season, I want to see him have a 20 to 25 point game, just to have a kind of a big burst game. It doesn't matter if it's against a bad team. It doesn't matter who it's against. I want to see him have that big burst game within the first 2 weeks of the season, even if he's kind of up and down throughout the course of those first few weeks. After that, I want to see him just progressively get better and more consistent as the year goes on. So by the All-Star break, you want to have a really good handle of what his future can be or what his role can be. Again, maybe that's asking a little too much. Maybe that's I'm not committing to anything here. I'm certainly kind of straddling the fence, but the progression, to me, especially with this team, again, like I'm not putting a win expectation on them. To me, what's important about this team is the progression. Are they better at the end of the season than they were at the beginning? Are they showing signs of progress? Do we understand what the picture on the box looks like? And so with Paolo Banchero specifically, I want to see that big burst game early, even if he's a little inconsistent early on. And then I want to see him just slowly, steadily gain more consistency to the point that we exit the season knowing Paolo Banchero is that dude. Certainly it looked like it in Summer League. I want to know by the end of the season, Paolo Banchero is that dude. And again, maybe after the All-Star break, let's just kind of chop that off. After the All-Star break, I want to see him up near 20 points per game, even if it's like 19 and a half, up near 19, 21, 22 points per game. Maybe shooting mid-40s, low 40 percentage. I think he's going to be a pretty high-volume shooter still. Averaging 6-7 rebounds per game, maybe up near 4 or 5 assists per game. And again, by the end of the season, I want to see him flirt with a triple-double, if not get a triple-double in one game. I do think he is capable of getting triple-doubles as a pro. And so you just want to kind of see hints of what he can become. So then as you get to the offseason, you can say, okay, this is what we need to do to get the most out of him and help him grow into those next steps. As far as Terrence Ross, I think the big thing that the Magic have really kind of hit on and centered on is that they want to stay in communication with Terrence Ross. I think they're not going to do anything that's against their interest. They still hold the cards with Terrence Ross. I think that they want to put him in a position that's favorable to him, but they're not just going to give him away. They want something in return, and that's kind of difficult, especially after the year Ross had. They weren't looking for a second-round pick. They were holding out for a first. There are no veteran options out there. We certainly put out a few. I had a few ideas that I really liked, but nothing really made sense at those junctures. From everything that you kind of understand, it's not that Ross hates being in Orlando, that Ross is unhappy with the team, that he dislikes the group that's here. It's just he feels like he's at a stage of his career where he wants to win and wants to be in a winning situation. And so, I think the Magic will be much more amenable to taking whatever's out there toward the trade deadline. Certainly, I think they'll be happy to kind of pot him off for a second-round pick, free up an open roster space, convert a two-way guy into that contract, add a second two-way guy or add a 10-day guy or whatever. I think that's definitely more palatable later on in the season. But Terrence isn't a problem. Like, he's still in the gym. He's still excited about the new training facility. He's still excited about this team's future by all accounts. And so, I think as long as there's an open dialogue, and from everything I've heard about the way Jeff Weltman operates, he is very open. He communicates really well with players. He lets them know what's going on. There is a lot of respect, from everything I understand, between the players and how this management group operates. As long as they're open and they're expressed and they're trying to help each other out, I don't see there being a problem with Ross. I think he's a real smooth dude. I think he's happy to be in Orlando if that's where he ends up. I think he will ultimately stay here in retirement. So I don't think he's so upset about that.
All right. I can feel that. I appreciate you answering my what is it? My request of
the speaker request, whatever it's called.
My question.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jay. That's why I'm here. That will do it for part 1 of our Twitter Spaces episode. We're gonna have actually 3 parts to this. There was enough to fill 3 parts, and since I'm going on vacation, it feels like that's a good excuse to kind of fill some time here on our show. Before we close out, though, I want to thank you all for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic, for following along with us. We'll be back again tomorrow. We'll recap Germany's final game in Eurobasket group phase as they play Hungary. To close out group phase. We'll have updates on Eurobasket on OrlandoMagicDaily.com. I'll still be following along on Twitter as well, so follow me at OMagicDaily. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter in general at @PhilipR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places to download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, always be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. We'll talk about it a little bit next week. I'm going to pre-record some episodes. We'll talk about it a little bit next week, about the Orlando Magic and their history with shooting. We'll get to that. We'll go deeper dive on that as we close up Shooting Month here on the podcast. Now that you're done listening to us, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. It's an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season, which starts Thursday. Woo! That's not my thing. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. I got to go back to watching the Aces and Storm. I forgot to mute my TV, and I don't feel like re-recording this. Thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll be back with part 2 of our Twitter Spaces on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again for another episode of Locked On Magic.